Okay, so this is our third and last video for this chapter. We're going to start out with the Golgi apparatus, also known as the Golgi complex, the Golgi stack, or the Golgi body. I typically say Golgi apparatus, but there are many names. It's called that because it was discovered by a guy with the last name of Golgi in 1898. So that's where the name comes from. It's a series of flattened bag-like structures which lie parallel to one another, and they're located near the nucleus. And what these guys do is they are the packaging plant of the cell. So I like to call them like the post office or the UPS, because they'll do all your packaging and shipping out of your substances. So they will wrap proteins into a membrane to form a lysosome, a peroxisome, or a vacuole, anything that the cell needs. The next one, the powerhouse of the cell, is the mitochondria. You guys have always learned of it as the powerhouse of the cell. It is a capsule-shaped organelle with a double membrane, as you can see here in the photo. Its job is to make energy for the cell. So powerhouse of the cell, what does that mean? It means it's making energy for your cells. All right. So we have our outer membrane, which is smooth, the inner membrane called the cristae, which is all folded up. The energy that it's going to make is called adenosine triphosphate, which we call ATP, which we will all be learning about in our photosynthesis chapter. And it also helps us with the process called cell respiration, which we'll also learn about in the photosynthesis chapter. Centrioles. Centrioles are two cylinder-shaped structures which lie perpendicular to one another, and they're only found in animal cells. They do two things for us. They help make cilia and flagella, which we'll be talking about in a second, and it helps in animal cell division, which we have a whole chapter on cell division coming up in a couple months. Cilia and flagella, these are thread-like structures which extend from the cytoplasm through the cell membrane to the surface of the cell. They look very similar. They're similar in structure, but obviously, as you can see in the photo, they're different in the length and how many there are. Typically, cilia are shorter and more numerous, so they're short and there's going to be a lot of them. And the flagella are longer, and usually there's only one per cell. There could be a couple more, but not as many as you would see in your cilia. So here's pictures of them. Here's a cell covered in cilia. The job of cilia is for sensory, and it also does aid in movement a little bit, but more so for allow the cell to communicate and sense its environment. The flagella, here you can see a cell with four, but they aid in movement. The most common one that you would know of is a sperm cell that has a tail which allows it to swim to the egg. Microtubules and microfilaments, they work together to make up the cytoskeleton of the cell. So it works just like your skeleton would. The microtubules are like the bones, and the microfilaments are like the muscles, the ligaments. And they're found throughout the cytoplasm, which give the cell shape, and like I said, it allows the cell to move. So microfilaments, which you see here, the green, arranged in bundles. They're able to contract and relax like muscles, and they function by aiding in movement. Microtubules, which you see in red, they are long, slender, and tube-like, and they are not flexible like your bones, and they help maintain shape. So together, as they work together, shape and movement. All right, moving on to the plants. So plants have a lot of the same organelles that animals do, but they also have some of their own stuff. First is the cell wall, and this provides support and strength. It's made out of cellulose, which we talked about last chapter. You have the primary cell wall, which is first, contains pectin and cellulose. The secondary cell wall comes next, and where they join together, like right here, that's called the middle lamella. Plants also have a central vacuole, so instead of having many vacuoles throughout the cell, it'll have one very large one, which contains water, minerals, sugars, and protein, which we call cell sap. We'll talk a little bit about central vacuoles more when we get to photosynthesis as well. In our next chapter, which is cell transport. So it's right there. The last thing we're going to talk about are plastids, and these are structures that contain pigments. in the cell, and they act as chemical factories, meaning they're going to make some sort of energy. There are three types. You got our main one, which is chloroplast that we learn about. That's in anything that's green. So the pigment that's in there, chlorophyll, and that is a green pigment. So when you look at plants and you see green, you're actually seeing the chloroplasts full of chlorophyll. So chlorophyll is a pigment. Chloroplast is the organelle. They sound very similar. How do you remember it? Chlorophyll chlorophyll's the chloroplast. So chlorophyll's inside. All the green you see. Next ones, we have chromoplasts, and there's many different kinds of these. It's any color, any pigment that is not green. So you've got carotene, which is orange, lycopene, which is red, xanthophyll, which is yellow, and anthocyanins, which is blue. So any other plant that is not green has a chromoplast instead. Last plastid is called a leucoplast, and these guys have no pigment at all. They're actually clear, and it looks like clear or white, and it actually contains starch. So you'd find these in potatoes. We're going to do a lab coming up that you will actually be able to look at these leucoplasts under a microscope. It's pretty cool. There are little openings within the cell walls here from cell to cell, and those are called the Plasmodesmata, and they act as passageways between your plant cells. The reason the cell needs Plasmodesmata is because the cell wall is too thick to be able to pass things through. So it needs little openings just because this is way too strong. Animal cells do have these, but they're called gap junctions. Just a reminder that plant cells do not have centrioles. We'll talk about why when we get to our cell division chapter. Okay. We will talk about bacteria in a separate video / lesson next week. Okay, so that's the end of this video. Have a great day, everybody.